Daniel's heart stopped when he overheard the words, sharp as a blade, slicing through the warmth of the evening. My gay brother is just the help. His brother's voice, laced with cruel amusement, echoed from the living room of their family's San Francisco home, where Daniel had spent weeks preparing for this visit. He stood frozen in the kitchen, a tray of drinks trembling in his hands, the sting of betrayal cutting deeper than he'd ever imagined. It was supposed to be a perfect weekend. Their parents were away on a rare vacation, leaving the sprawling Victorian house to Daniel, 25, a graphic designer with a quiet confidence and a heart full of hope. He'd invited his older brother, Ryan, 28, to bridge the distance that had grown between them since Daniel came out 3 years ago. Ryan, a corporate lawyer in Chicago, had always been the golden child, charismatic, successful, and effortlessly charming. Daniel had idolized him growing up, but their bond had frayed under the weight of unspoken judgments. This weekend was Daniel's chance to rebuild, to show Ryan who he truly was, and to introduce him to Ethan, the man who made his world brighter. The house buzzed with anticipation as Daniel prepared for Ryan's arrival. He'd spent hours decorating, stringing fairy lights across the living room, and curating a playlist of soft indie music to set a welcoming mood. Ethan, 26, a barista, an aspiring poet with a smile that could melt glaciers, had helped him cook a feast: roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, and a kale salad with candied pecans. They'd laughed together in the kitchen, stealing kisses between chopping vegetables, their love a quiet rebellion against the world's noise. Daniel felt invincible with Ethan by his side, certain that even Ryan's stoic demeanor would soften in the face of their happiness. But now, as Daniel stood just out of sight, Ryan's words shattered that illusion. Just the help. The phrase wasn't just a jab at Daniel's sexuality. It was a dismissal of his worth, his place in the family. Ryan was on the phone, his voice low but unmistakable, speaking to someone with a casual cruelty Daniel had never heard before. Yeah, he's got his little boyfriend here, playing house. It's pathetic. Really. He thinks he's one of us, but he's just the help. Each word landed like a punch, unraveling years of memories. Ryan teaching him to ride a bike, cheering at his high school art shows, promising to always have his back. Daniel's grip tightened on the tray, the glasses clinking faintly. Ethan, who'd been arranging dessert plates nearby, caught his eye, concern flickering across his face. You okay? He whispered, stepping closer. Daniel shook his head, unable to speak, his throat tight with a mix of rage and hurt. He wanted to storm into the living room, confront Ryan, and demand answers. But doubt crept in. What if Ryan was right? What if Daniel's place in the family was just a role he'd been playing? A shadow of the brother they wanted? He set the tray down, hands shaking, and turned to Ethan. I need a second, he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded, his hand brushing Daniel's arm, a silent promise of support. Daniel slipped out the back door into the cool night air, the San Francisco fog curling around him like a shroud. He leaned against the porch railing, staring at the city lights blurring in the distance, and let the weight of Ryan's words settle in. This wasn't just about a cruel comment. It was about years of feeling like he had to prove himself, to earn a place in a family that should have loved him unconditionally. Growing up, Daniel had always felt like the odd one out. His parents, traditional and image-conscious, had doted on Ryan's achievements, his law school acceptance, his corner office, his picture-perfect life. Daniel, with his sketchbooks and quiet dreams, was the sensitive one, the one who didn't quite fit. When he came out at 22, his parents had been polite but distant, offering strained smiles and vague promises to support him. Ryan had been worse, silent, withdrawing into a cold formality that left Daniel aching for the brother he'd once known. This weekend was supposed to change that, to show Ryan that Daniel's life, his love, was just as valid. Instead, it had exposed a truth Daniel wasn't ready to face. He heard the back door creak open, and Ethan stepped out, his gray sweater catching the dim porch light. "Talk to me," Ethan said softly, his voice a lifeline. Daniel took a shaky breath, recounting what he'd heard, the words spilling out like a wound bleeding open. Ethan listened, his jaw tightening, but he didn't interrupt. When Daniel finished, Ethan pulled him into a hug, his warmth grounding Daniel against the storm in his chest. "He's wrong," Ethan said firmly. "You're not the help. You're the heart of this family. Whether he sees it or not." Daniel wanted to believe him, but the hurt ran deep. He thought of the years spent trying to please his family, the late nights designing posters for Ryan's charity galas, the holidays spent biting his tongue when his parents skirted around his identity. He'd always been the one to give, to bend, to make space for their comfort. And now, Ryan's words had stripped that effort bare, reducing him to a caricature. "We don't have to do this," Ethan said, pulling back to meet Daniel's eyes. "We can leave. Go back to our place. You don't owe him anything." But Daniel shook his head. Leaving would mean letting Ryan win, letting his cruelty define the weekend. No, he invited Ryan here, opened his home and his heart. He wasn't going to run. "I need to face him," Daniel said, his voice steadier now. "But I don't know how." Ethan squeezed his hand, his eyes fierce with loyalty. "You won't do it alone. I'm right here, together." They stepped back inside, the music and laughter from the living room now feeling like a mockery. Daniel's pulse raced as he prepared to confront his brother, not knowing if this would mend their bond or break it forever. The living room glowed with the soft flicker of fairy lights, but the warmth Daniel had so carefully crafted fell hollow now. Ryan sat on the leather couch, phone still in hand, laughing at something the person on the other end said. He hadn't noticed Daniel standing in the doorway, Ethan a quiet strength at his side. Daniel's chest tightened, a mix of fear and resolve battling within him. He'd spent years avoiding conflict with Ryan, always the younger brother deferring to the older one's confidence. But tonight, that ended. "Ryan," Daniel said, his voice cutting through the room like a crack of thunder. Ryan's head snapped up, his easy smile faltering as he registered Daniel's expression, raw, unguarded, and furious. He muttered a quick goodbye into the phone and set it down, leaning back with a casual air that only deepened Daniel's anger. "What's up, Dan?" Ryan asked, his tone light, as if he hadn't just torn his brother's world apart. Daniel took a step forward, his hands clenched at his sides. "I heard you," he said, each word deliberate. "On the phone. Calling me the help, saying I'm pathetic." The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with tension. Ryan's face shifted, a flicker of guilt quickly masked by defensiveness. "You were eavesdropping?" he shot back, sitting up straighter. "That's real classy." "Dan," Don't turn this on me, Daniel snapped, his voice rising. You came into my home, ate my food, and then mocked me behind my back. My life. My boyfriend. He gestured to Ethan, who stood silently, his presence a steady anchor. Ryan's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to Daniel, his jaw tightening. For a moment, silence hung heavy, the kind that precedes a storm. Look, Ryan said finally, running a hand through his hair. It was just a joke. You're taking it way too seriously. But his voice lacked conviction, and Daniel saw through the excuse. It wasn't a joke. It was a glimpse into Ryan's heart, a truth he kept hidden behind years of polite distance. Daniel's throat burned, but he forced himself to speak. A joke? You think calling me the help is funny? Reducing my life to some cheap punchline? Ryan stood, his height and broad shoulders filling the space. A reminder of the power dynamic they'd always had. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said, his voice sharp now. I didn't mean it like that. I was just venting. You know how it is. But Daniel didn't know. Not really. He'd spent his life trying to understand Ryan, to bridge the gap between them, while Ryan seemed content to let it widen. Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. You don't get to decide what hurts him, he said, his eyes locked on Ryan's. You don't get to dismiss his life because it doesn't fit your narrative. Ryan's gaze hardened, and for a moment, Daniel feared he'd lash out. But Ryan only scoffed, crossing his arms. This doesn't concern you, he told Ethan, his tone dripping with condescension. It does, Daniel interjected, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Ethan's my partner. He's part of my life, whether you like it or not. And you don't get to come here and act like I'm less than you because of who I love. The words felt like a release, years of pent-up frustration spilling out. He saw a flicker of something in Ryan's eyes, regret, maybe, or discomfort, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Ryan shook his head, his voice low. You've always been so sensitive, Dan. Always making everything about you. The words hit like a slap, but Daniel refused to flinch. He'd spent too long shrinking himself to fit his family's expectations. Maybe I'm sensitive, he said, stepping closer. But at least I'm honest about who I am. Can you say the same? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Ryan's face tightened, and for the first time, Daniel saw a crack in his brother's polished facade. But before Ryan could respond, the doorbell rang, a sharp intrusion that broke the moment. Daniel hesitated, then moved to answer it, grateful for the interruption, but dreading what came next. It was their neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, a kind but nosy widow who'd probably seen Ryan's rental car and wanted to chat. Daniel forced a smile, exchanging pleasantries while his mind churned. When he returned, Ryan was standing by the window, staring out at the city. Ethan sat on the couch, his expression a mix of concern and quiet anger. The tension hadn't dissipated, it had only settled, like dust after a storm. We're not done, Daniel said, his voice quieter now, but no less resolute. Ryan didn't turn, but his shoulders stiffened. Fine, he muttered. Let's eat. Then we'll talk. Dinner was a strained affair. The food, so carefully prepared, tasted like ash to Daniel. Ryan made small talk about his job, the weather, anything but the elephant in the room. Ethan tried to keep the conversation going, his warmth a contrast to Ryan's cool detachment. But Daniel could feel the weight of unspoken words, the years of distance that had led to this moment. He wondered if Ryan even cared, or if this weekend was just another obligation to check off his list. As they cleared the plates, Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from his best friend, Mia, who'd been his rock through his coming-out journey. "How's it going with Ryan?" she asked. Daniel stared at the screen, unsure how to answer. He wanted to tell her everything, the hurt, the anger, the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, he could reach his brother. But for now, he typed back, "It's complicated. I'll call you later." The night stretched on, and Daniel knew the real conversation was still ahead. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but he was done hiding. Ethan squeezed his hand under the table, a silent reminder that he wasn't alone. Whatever happened next, Daniel would face it head-on, for himself and for the life he'd built. After dinner, the three of them moved to the living room, the fairy lights casting a soft glow that felt at odds with the tension simmering beneath the surface. Daniel sat on the edge of the couch, his hands clasped tightly, while Ethan stayed close, his presence a quiet reassurance. Ryan leaned against the fireplace, arms crossed, his face unreadable. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. Daniel knew this was the moment. He couldn't let Ryan leave without addressing the wound his words had opened. "Ryan," Daniel began, his voice steady but laced with emotion, "I need you to understand what you said. Not just tonight, but what it means. You called me to help, like I'm some outsider in my own family. Do you know how that feels?" His eyes locked on Ryan's, searching for a flicker of remorse. But Ryan's expression remained guarded. Ryan shifted, running a hand through his hair, a nervous habit Daniel recognized from their childhood. "I told you. It was a stupid comment," he said, his tone clipped. "I didn't mean for you to hear it. Can't we just move on?" The dismissal stung, but Daniel pressed on, refusing to let Ryan dodge the truth. "No, we can't," Daniel said, his voice rising. "Because it's not just about tonight. It's about every time you've looked at me like I'm less than you. Every time you've ignored who I am because it's inconvenient for you." He paused, his chest tight with years of unspoken pain. "I came out to you first, Ryan, before Mom and Dad. I trusted you. And you shut me out." Ryan's jaw clenched, and for a moment, he looked away, his gaze fixed on the floor. "You think this is easy for me?" he said finally, his voice low. "You think I know how to deal with this? You changed everything. Dan. The family. The way people see us. I didn't sign up for that." Daniel felt a surge of anger, but beneath it, a pang of understanding. Ryan wasn't just cruel. He was struggling, caught in his own web of expectations and fears. But that didn't excuse him. "You didn't sign up for it?" Daniel shot back. "I didn't choose to be gay, Ryan. I chose to be honest. And you chose to push me away." Ethan, who'd been silent, spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "Daniel's not asking you to fix the world, Ryan. He's asking you to be his brother. To see him for who he is, not what you think he should be." Ryan's eyes flicked to Ethan, a flash of irritation crossing his face. But he didn't respond. The room fell silent again, the weight of their words settling like fog. Finally, Ryan sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I don't know what you want from me, Dan," he said, his voice softer now, almost defeated. I came here because you asked me to. I'm trying. Okay, but I don't get it. Your life. Your choices. The word choices hit Daniel like a slap. But before he could respond, Ryan continued. I'm not like you. I don't know how to be. Daniel's heart ached at the admission. A mix of frustration and pity. Ryan wasn't apologizing. Not really. But it was the closest he'd come to vulnerability. Daniel wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see the pain he'd caused. But he also saw the boy who'd once been his hero, the brother who'd carried him home when he'd fallen off his bike. That Ryan was still in there, buried under layers of pride and fear. Then learn, Daniel said quietly. I'm not asking you to understand everything. I'm asking you to try. To listen. To stop treating me like I'm less than you. Ryan didn't respond, but his silence felt different now. Not dismissive, but contemplative. Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't a resolution, but it was a start. The conversation shifted after that, the tension easing slightly as they moved to safer topics. Work, the city, their parents' latest home renovation. But Daniel could feel the undercurrent of their earlier words, the unspoken questions lingering. When Ryan excused himself to take a call, Daniel and Ethan exchanged a glance, a silent agreement to give him space. Later, as they cleaned up, Ethan pulled Daniel into the kitchen, his hands gentle on Daniel's shoulders. You were incredible, he said, his eyes warm with pride. You stood up to him. That took guts. Daniel managed a small smile, but the weight of the night still pressed on him. I don't know if it changed anything, he admitted. He's still Ryan. Ethan nodded, brushing a strand of hair from Daniel's forehead. Maybe you won't change overnight, but you showed him who you are. That matters. Daniel leaned into him, drawing strength from his warmth. For the first time that night, he felt a flicker of hope, not for Ryan's approval, but for his own resilience. As they returned to the living room, Daniel noticed Ryan standing by the window again, his phone forgotten in his hand. He looked lost, staring out at the city lights, and for a moment, Daniel wondered what his brother was thinking. Was he wrestling with guilt, fear, or was he already planning his escape back to Chicago, where he could pretend this night never happened? Whatever the answer, Daniel knew one thing. He wasn't the help. He was Daniel, artist, partner, brother, and he was done apologizing for it. The next morning, the house felt quieter, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Daniel woke early, the events of the previous night replaying in his mind like a looped film. He lay in bed, Ethan's arm draped over him, and listened to the soft rhythm of his breathing. For a moment, he let himself linger in the comfort of their shared warmth. But the weight of Ryan's words and their unresolved conversation pulled him back to reality. Today was another chance, but also another risk. Downstairs, Ryan was already at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone over a cup of coffee. He looked up as Daniel entered, his expression neutral but softer than the night before. Morning, Ryan said, his voice lacking its usual edge. Daniel nodded, pouring himself a cup, the silence between them heavy but not hostile. Ethan joined them shortly after, his easy smile cutting through the tension as he offered to make pancakes. Only if you're ready for my secret recipe, he teased, winking at Daniel. Ryan managed a small chuckle, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like they could be a family. But Daniel wasn't ready to let the night go. As they ate, He set down his fork, his resolve hardening. "Ryan, we need to finish what we started last night," he said, his voice calm but firm. Ryan's fork paused midair, and he sighed, setting it down. "I figured," he said, leaning back in his chair. "All right, Dan. Let's talk. This time." Daniel chose his words carefully, wanted to build a bridge rather than burn one. "I don't want us to keep drifting apart," he said. "You're my brother. That matters to me. But I need you to see me, not as the gay brother, not as the help, but as me." "Daniel." He paused, searching Ryan's face. "Can you do that?" Ryan's eyes met his, and for the first time, Daniel saw a flicker of genuine conflict. "I don't know," Ryan admitted, his voice low. "I want to, but it's hard. Growing up, we had this image. You know, the perfect family. Mom and dad's expectations. The whole deal. And when you came out, it threw me. I didn't know how to handle it." Daniel's chest tightened, but he nodded, encouraging Ryan to continue. "It's not about you being gay," Ryan said, his words halting. "It's about me not knowing how to fit that into my world. I'm supposed to be the one who has it all together, but I don't. Not with this." The admission was raw, a crack in Ryan's armor that Daniel hadn't expected. Ethan, who'd been quietly listening, spoke up. "Nobody's asking you to have all the answers, Ryan," he said. "Just to show up. To try." Ryan's gaze flicked to Ethan, and this time, there was less defensiveness, more curiosity. Daniel seized the moment, leaning forward. "I'm not asking you to change who you are," he said. "I'm asking you to let me be who I am, and to respect that." Ryan was silent for a long moment, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee mug. Finally, he nodded, almost imperceptibly. "I'll try," he said, the words heavy with effort. "I don't know if I'll get it right, but I'll try." It wasn't a grand apology, but it was more than Daniel had expected. He felt a cautious hope, like a seed taking root in uncertain soil. The rest of the day passed with a tentative ease. They walked through Golden Gate Park, the crisp autumn air a welcome distraction. Ethan's easy humor kept the mood light, and Ryan, while still reserved, seemed to soften, laughing at Ethan's stories and even asking Daniel about his latest design project. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, a step toward understanding, if not acceptance. That evening, as they sat on the porch with beers in hand, Ryan broke the silence. "I'm sorry about what I said," he said, his voice low, almost lost in the city's hum. "It was cruel. I didn't mean it. Not really. But I said it. And that's on me." Daniel's breath caught, the apology catching him off guard. He nodded, unable to speak, the weight of years of hurt shifting slightly. "I don't know how to fix this," Ryan continued, staring at the bottle in his hands. "But I don't want to lose you. Dan, you're my brother." The words were simple, but they carried a sincerity Daniel hadn't heard in years. He reached out, resting a hand on Ryan's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the fragile bridge they were building. As the night deepened, Daniel felt a sense of possibility. Ryan wasn't perfect, and neither was he. But for the first time, they were talking, really talking. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. The weekend wasn't over, but Daniel already felt the shift. Ryan's apology, however small, had cracked open a door that had been closed for years. Sunday morning brought a new rhythm to the house, less tension, more curiosity. They cooked breakfast together, Ryan surprising Daniel by taking over the bacon, teasing Ethan about his fancy avocado toast. It was the kind of moment Daniel had dreamed of as a kid. Simple, shared, a glimpse of the brother he'd once known. But healing wasn't linear. As they sat in the living room later, flipping through old photo albums Daniel had pulled out, the past resurfaced. Pictures of their childhood, Ryan and Daniel at the beach, their parents beaming at Ryan's graduation, stirred memories both warm and painful. "Remember this?" Ryan said, pointing to a photo of them building a sandcastle. "You were so mad when I knocked it over." He laughed, but Daniel's smile was tight. He remembered that day, how Ryan's teasing had felt like a betrayal. Even then, "I always felt like I was chasing you," Daniel admitted, his voice quiet. "Like I had to prove I was good enough to be your brother." Ryan's laughter faded, and he closed the album, his expression serious. "I never wanted you to feel that way," he said. I was the older one. I thought I had to be perfect. For Mom and Dad. For you." The honesty caught Daniel off guard. He'd always seen Ryan as untouchable, but now he saw the pressure his brother carried, the weight of being the family's pride, the one who couldn't fail. It didn't erase the hurt, but gave it context. "I don't need you to be perfect," Daniel said. "I just need you to be here." Ryan nodded, and for the first time, Daniel felt like his brother was listening, not just hearing, but truly seeing him. They spent the afternoon sharing stories, some light, some heavy. Ryan talked about his high-pressure job, the expectations that left him sleepless. Daniel opened up about the fear he'd felt coming out, the loneliness of navigating a world that didn't always accept him. Ethan chimed in with his own experiences, his poet's heart weaving their stories together with quiet wisdom. As the sun set, they decided to go out, a spontaneous plan to hit a local bar in the Castro district. The vibrant energy of the neighborhood, rainbow flags fluttering, couples laughing hand in hand, felt like a celebration of everything Daniel had fought for. Ryan seemed out of his element at first, his eyes darting around the crowded bar. But he didn't pull away. When a drag queen pulled him into a dance, he laughed, letting himself be swept up in the moment. Daniel watched, a mix of pride and disbelief swelling in his chest. This was Ryan, trying. Later, as they walked back to the house, Ryan lagged behind, his hands in his pockets. "This place," he said, gesturing to the colorful streets. "It's a lot, but it's alive. I get why you love it." Daniel smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't expected. "It's home," he said simply. Ethan squeezed his hand, and for a moment, the three of them walked in companionable silence, the city's pulse beating around them. Back at the house, they sat up late, the conversation turning to the future. Ryan admitted he'd been afraid of what Daniel's coming out meant for their family, for his own identity. "I didn't know how to be your brother anymore," he said. "But I'm starting to figure it out." Daniel's eyes stung, but he blinked back the tears. "Good," he said, "because I'm not going anywhere." As they said goodnight, Ryan pulled Daniel into a hug, a real one, not the stiff embrace of their past. "I'm proud of you," Ryan said, his voice rough. "I don't say it enough, but I am." Daniel nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. Ryan's flight was early Monday morning, and the house felt emptier as Daniel and Ethan drove him to the airport. The weekend had been a roller coaster, painful, raw, but ultimately transformative. Daniel glanced at Ryan in the back seat, his brother staring out the window, a quiet thoughtfulness in his expression. They hadn't solved everything, but they'd started something new, a fragile thread of understanding that Daniel hoped would grow stronger. At the airport, Ryan lingered by the curb, his suitcase at his feet. This was different, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Better than I expected. Daniel laughed, the tension of the past days easing. Yeah, well, you're not as bad as I thought, he teased. Ryan's smile widened, and for a moment, they were just brothers again, not defined by their differences. Take care of him, Ryan said to Ethan, his tone serious but warm. Ethan nodded, his arm around Daniel's waist. Always, he said. Ryan turned to Daniel, his eyes softening. I meant what I said. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry for everything. Daniel nodded, his throat tight. Just keep showing up, he said. That's enough. As Ryan disappeared into the terminal, Daniel felt a weight lift. The hurt of his brother's words still lingered, but so did the hope of his apology, his effort to change. Ethan pulled him close, kissing his temple. You did it, he whispered. You showed him who you are. Daniel smiled, leaning into him. We did it, he corrected. Back home. Daniel sat at his desk, sketching a new design, a vibrant mural inspired by the weekend. All bold colors and intertwined figures. It was a tribute to resilience, to love, to the messy beauty of family. He thought of Ryan, of the brother he'd lost and was slowly finding again. He thought of Ethan, his anchor, his home. And he thought of himself, not the help, not the outcast, but Daniel, whole and enough. The weekend had taught him something vital. His worth wasn't tied to his family's approval, but to the life he'd built, the love he'd chosen. Ryan's mockery had cut deep, but it had also sparked a fire in Daniel, a determination to live unapologetically, to claim his place in the world. As he sketched, the lines flowing freely, he felt a quiet strength. He wasn't just the help. He was the artist, the partner, the brother, the man who'd fought for his truth and won. And as the San Francisco fog rolled in, blanketing the city in its familiar embrace, Daniel knew he'd carry that truth forward, no matter what came next. He had Ethan. He had himself. And now, maybe, he had Ryan too, not perfect, but present. Ascending.